We're studying the Song of Solomon. We're calling it the Song of Love. We're coming toward the end of the Song of Solomon. We're actually in the fifth song. This is the last picture of the fifth song. This lesson I'm calling Love's Great Desire. And you see the heartbeat of Sulamith as she realizes some of the things that created the problems for her and Solomon, and she wants to correct them. So I'm calling it Love's Great Desire. And we're taking our text from chapter 7, verse 11. She says, "Come, my beloved, let us go forth to the field. Let us lodge in the villages." Now what she's doing, she's actually asking him to return with her back to the place where they first met. She lived in northern Israel as a shepherd girl. That's where they had met. Now, you'll note in this story that early in their relationship, it was Solomon that was inviting her to come follow him. Now we find the roles have reversed, and she is inviting him to follow her. I believe this is what God has intended in marriage. Instead of there being competition and us competing with each other, we should be completing each other. And so she recognizes they really need to spend some more time with each other. And so this is what she's saying. Let us get up early to the vineyards. Let us see if the vine has budded and whether the grape blossoms are open and the pomegranates are in bloom. That sounds very similar to the words that Solomon had used back in chapter 2 and verse 13. When he was inviting her to come follow him, he's saying, it's springtime, and the flowers are blooming, the birds are singing, it's the time of love, and he's inviting her. Now she's using very similar words to invite him to come with her. Let's go back home again. I want to go back to the place where we first met. Now what she is doing, she's recognizing they've not been spending enough time together. Now, if you think you're busy, then put yourself in their position. It's the king and the queen. Everybody wants an audience with the king and queen. Everybody has got something they want to discuss with them. And so what she's saying, she's recognizing that we've made a mistake here. We've been so busy that we haven't had time for each other. I've said it before, but it bears repeating. Laziness and busyness are the two great dangers to a marriage. You can get so busy that you don't have time for the people that actually mean the most to you. This is what they have said, is doing good things can become the enemy of doing the best things. And that's what we find here in this story, is they have been so busy as king and queen, they've been neglecting their marriage. Now, the reason I'm emphasizing this is because there are too many of us that are making the same mistake. I certainly have made it from time to time. I just get so busy with the work, doing God's work. In fact, it's tragic, but sometimes the minister can get so busy doing the work of God that he doesn't have time for the Lord of the work. And the same is true in your marriage. Your marriage should be a high priority. You've got to plan, make time for that. If you don't, it's simply not going to happen by itself. You must make time for this. And so she recognizes their mistake that has caused this difficulty in their marriage. And she is saying, I want to spend some time with you. Now, I know we have the term that we'll say quality time, but quality time is just spending time. That's what it's all about. Time where you are devoting to them, where you're emphasizing, focusing upon them and their needs. So she's a country girl and wanting to go back home. It's an old saying, but there's a lot of truth in it. You can take the girl out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the girl. And so that's what she is saying to him. I want to go back to my home again for a second honeymoon. I want to divide this lesson into three main parts. The first part, I will simply call it departing from the city. Jerusalem, of course, is the capital city. That's where the throne is. That's where Solomon is the king over Israel, out of his capital of Jerusalem. But she wants a second honeymoon. We do not know how much time has gone by in their marriage, but obviously they are not newlyweds anymore. No. And so she's saying, I want to spend some time with you, alone with you. Let's go back to where I was born and raised, back where I met you the first time. And so this is what's happening. She's saying, let's go return back to where our love began. Now, I've come to believe very strongly in full cycles. Full cycles. I really believe it is a godly biblical principle. Seed time and harvest, the cold and the heat. It's just a part of life. It's the way life is designed. And basically that's what she's saying. I want to come full cycle. I want to go back to the place where our love began. And one of the ways that she motivates him is by promising, if you will go with me, I will love you like I have never loved you before. Now, this lady has learned something about motivating her husband. She's not just nagging at him. She's not making threats, but she's making a promise that gets his attention. I will love you like I've never loved you before. No wonder he was motivated to follow her this time. Let's go back to the countryside. Let's go back where we first met and spend some quality time together. The second part of this lesson is what I'm going to call desiring to visit the garden. Now, you find over and over again in this story, it talks about the garden. It talks about her becoming his garden. Gardens are very important places, particularly to lovers. They are beautiful romantic settings. And so this is what she's saying. I want to desire to visit the garden, to leave this busy hustle and bustle of life here in the city. Let's go back to the quiet countryside and just take a walk in the garden. Go see if the flowers are blooming and see if the birds are singing. Now in Genesis 2:24, he says, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they two shall become one flesh. Now notice something in that verse of scripture that's very important. This verse does not say that she will leave her father and mother. It says he will leave. Now, I understand in the journey of life and the different circumstances in our relationship that sometimes it is the lady that has to leave. But usually it's the other way around. In fact, being a pastor, a minister, I can't tell you how many weddings I performed over the years, but one of the things I have observed in weddings, do you know who is most likely to cry the most in a wedding? I've watched this again and again. It's the mother of the groom. That's right, because as someone has said, that there really just no place, for a man to have two women in his life. It's just not going to work properly. And so it doesn't say that she will leave father and mother. It says he will leave and be joined to his wife. Now, as I said, sometimes because of special situations and personalities, that's not the way it works, but that's usually the way it works. And so there's this homing instinct, this desire from this lady saying, I want to go back to the place where she instructed me. Those were her words. I want to go back to there, go back home again, and just see the old home place again. In chapter 8, it opens up with a statement from the maiden as she says, "Oh, that you were my brother, I could kiss you in public and not be ashamed." Now, it's not a literal wish that he was her brother, but she was saying, "I wish you were like my brother," because in that culture, men and women do not kiss publicly unless it was a brother and a sister or a father and a daughter, that a family relationship. But the romantic relationship, no, that was not practiced in that culture. And so this is what she's saying. It's obvious now they have come back to the home place, and she's desiring to express her affection, her love for her husband, but there's a problem. Her husband is also the king. And being the king, there is proper protocol the way that you approach the king. Now, this is something that ladies need to understand concerning their husbands, that there are some things that are just inappropriate. Men need to understand the same thing. There are some things in each culture, and cultures vary, but in each culture there are cultural rules, things that you're not supposed to do in public, things that you break those rules and it creates all kinds of hardship. Having traveled the world, that's one of the things that I'm always asking. When I go into a new culture, one of the first questions I want to ask my interpreters and those I'm working with is I'll say to them, you tell me, what are some of the things that are taboo that I am not supposed to do? I'm very, very strong about using my hands when I talk, and I've discovered that some of the things that are acceptable here in the United States are not acceptable in other countries. And so I'd say, you tell me what hand signals I can use, how I can use my hands, because these are cultural rules, cultural barriers. And that's what she's talking about here. She's saying, I don't want to embarrass my husband, because even though he's my husband, he's also the king. And I don't want to do anything that would be an embarrassment to him. Now notice something here. She's wanting to go back home. It's more than just this homing instinct of going back to the place where she was born and raised. One of the things she wants to do is to show off her husband. It's almost like saying, see, I did pretty well for myself, didn't I? I married the king. Now, there's nothing wrong with this. This is perfectly natural. It's you can call it sibling rivalry if you want to, but that among family, among those that are closest to you, those that you grew up with, you want to go back and say, hey, I done pretty good, didn't I? And that's what she's saying. I want to show you off to my family. I want to show them that I am married to the king. And then for the third time, she uses this statement, don't awaken love too early. And of course, the statement is there, by the hinds of the field, by the deer of the field. It obviously was a way that they would use in expressing an oath. This is something that is very serious. So the third time this statement is used. The first time it was used when they were in courtship. They were dating each other. The second time it is used is when they were being reconciled after they'd had some problems in their marriage. Now the third time it's used, she's back home again. She's come back home and she's saying, I've got to be careful here, because if I'm not careful, I will show undue affection and it will become an embarrassment to my husband, because my husband is also the king. So when she says, don't awaken love too early, she's simply saying, I must be careful not to do anything that will bring reproach on our relationship. Oh, I've discovered this in life, and I know that there are those that would disagree with me, that they think that pastoral ministry and that spiritual leadership in the church is, you just got to be like everybody else. No, I've discovered to be a leader, you've got to be at least one step ahead. One step ahead. And if you're not, then you're not a leader. It's that simple, my friend. And there are certain language I use at home I would never use in the pulpit because I respect it too much. Some things I would not say. And it's all a part of your message. It's all a part of what you're trying to communicate. So what she's saying here, my husband is the king. I must not forget that when I go back home. It's easy there in that relationship to forget and not show the proper respect. Now, you ladies, listen very carefully what I'm going to share next. A husband needs the respect of his wife. Without that, there's something very serious that's going to be missing in the marriage. In the book of Ephesians 5:33, he ends this chapter by saying, "Nevertheless, let each one of you in particular so love his own wife as himself." I believe that's one of men's biggest problems, is properly communicating your love to your wife, to your spouse. It's not that you don't love her, but it's that we speak different languages, and you've got to learn to say it in her language. So communicating your love to her, I think that's one of the greatest needs that she has in her life. But listen to the last part of this verse. And let the wife see that she respects her husband. I have been around ladies that obviously did not respect their husband. And it always showed. It is just a glaring mistake that everybody else looks and they see it. And I've discovered in my own personal life that I've reached the point in life, there's not a lot of things that I need. I really don't need that much more food or clothing, or it doesn't even take as much money as it used to. But I tell you one thing that I hunger for. Sometimes I actually could use the word crave. It's such a strong desire. That is respect. And one of my great values in life is I want those that know me the best to respect me the most. If I have that, I don't care about anything else. No, I'm happy to sit in the corner and just watch the party, as long as I know that I have their respect. That's what she's referring to here. I must not do anything that would bring reproach upon my husband. I've got to show him respect. Now, the third part of the lesson is what I'm going to call delighted to be home. Delighted to be home. See, there really no place like home. I've traveled the world, and I promise you, there is no place like home. Home is the place where life makes up its mind. That's where you learn so many important lessons that are going to guide your decisions for the rest of your life. Is at home. Home. Home is the place where life begins and life ends. It's the starting and the ending. And so home is very special. She is delighted to be home. See, it's well said, no matter how far away or how plain, there is no place like home. She's back home again, and she's so happy to be there. See, this is what I would call the cycle of life. Begins at home. Home. Home is the place where we're born. That's where life begins. The little helpless baby that cannot care for itself, and there it's loved, and everything that it needs is provided at home. Then you go to the stage of the child. And as a child, you begin to discover your personality, and you know what I'm talking about. Some children are just happy-go-lucky children. Others are they're more sober-minded, and some are very talkative. Others are quiet. Then you go to the stage of youth. youth, where you begin to discover all your different gifts and you're getting the training that you need to become an adult. The adult, of course, is where you're going to spend the majority of your life. You're going to spend your time from the young adult through middle age to the elderly. Adult life, it's all based upon, though, things that started back at home. They tell us that a child by age 5 has learned 1/2 of everything they're going to know in life. That's a shocking statistic. And yet I am convinced that it's true. It's true. And so as an adult, you're basing everything back to the home, the relationship, the teaching, the training, the instruction that you received. And then finally, of course, it finally ends in death, when it is all finished. That's the full cycle, the cycle of life that began in the home and makes full cycle and comes back home again. And so that's what she is a picture of, even though they're not elderly, they're not dying here, but they're older now. They're more mature. I would say they are probably middle-aged at this point. And so as they return back home, as they come home, in chapter 8 and verse 5, you find a statement that has been repeated. This is the 3rd time. Who is this coming up from the wilderness, leaning on her beloved? Now note that. The first time that we saw that question, it was where she was going to Jerusalem for their wedding. Who is this coming up to Jerusalem? The second time is when they are being reconciled in their relationship with each other. Now here, who is this coming up from the wilderness? But it gives this added phrase, leaning on her beloved. What is that? What's the difference? The difference is she has learned the secret of not trying to walk alone. That's maturity. That's maturity. She's come to the place that she's not trying to control him. She's not, no. When she's inviting him to follow her, there's nothing controlling in that at all. It's just a heartfelt desire that she has to want to go back home again. But she's learned this secret of leaning on her beloved. What a beautiful statement. See, life can become exhausting trying to walk alone. It's very exhausting to try to do that. It's not a good way to try to live your life, trying to do it by yourself. In fact, it's one of the statements that you hear the little children make. Life can be hard when we act like little children saying, I can do it by myself. Oh my. How many parents have heard that statement as a child has discovered its will and now they want to be independent and they want to do it by myself. But true maturity is not trying to do it by yourself anymore. True maturity is coming full circle where you realize that is so exhausting to try to do it by myself. I don't want to do it by myself. I want to do it with you. That's what she is saying. Mature love is this way. Mature love wants to return to its roots, to go back to the place where it all began, to go back there and to delight in, this has been a good journey. We have learned a lot of things. We've accomplished a lot, and it's not been a bad journey. It's been a good journey. I think spiritually, the same thing is true. That true maturity as a Christian is learning not how to live for Jesus. It's learning how to lean on Jesus and allow Jesus to live his kind of life through you. In the 8th chapter of the book of Romans, Paul closes that powerful chapter by saying, I am persuaded that, and he starts listing all kinds of things, life and death, principalities and powers. He's naming all kinds of things. And he says, they shall not be able to separate us from the love of God which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. Boy, that's a powerful statement. A powerful statement. That there's nothing in life that if you learn how to lean on Jesus, to rest in Him, to trust in Him, there is nothing that can separate you from the love of God. Oh, what a delight. I'm not afraid of backsliding. Why? Because I'm not trying to live this life anymore. I've learned how to lean heavily on Jesus and allow Him to live His kind of life through me. That means nothing will be impossible. And so that's what she's saying. And she's saying, I want to go back home again to rejoice. I want to go back home again and celebrate. I want to show off my husband. Do you see there's a spiritual message here for you and I that we're all headed for home. This earth is not our home. We're headed for an eternal home. And what are we going to do? We're going to celebrate. We're going to show off our groom, our husband. Who is the groom? He's the King. He's Jesus. And we're going to say, I didn't do too bad, did I? I made a good choice when I gave my heart to Jesus. Oh, what a story. What a story. And so it all ends up with these words, home, sweet home. There's no place like that. And how I rejoice in it because I realize that I'm coming to the senior years now. I'm a lot closer home than I was when I started, but it's been a good journey. And I rejoice to think of that day when I will see Him face to face. I pray God bless you on your Christian journey as we head for home.